Okay, I am recording this days away from giving birth. I've been doing all the research necessary to make sure that I am set up for a successful postpartum and that I have everything in place to feel good or as good as possible after having a baby. And I recently came across the product line Anya and dove deep into everything that their brand is about and the fact that they are a product line specifically designated and designed to cater to women postpartum. And I was lucky enough to be able to be introduced to the founder of the company, and that is Jane Baecher. We're going to talk to her right now about Anya, about postpartum, about how crazy it is that we don't have better systems set up to support women in their postpartum phase, and also about the fact that I feel like I'm going to be better set up this time around because of this company. So let's jump in. I was like looking and researching and trying to like get everything situated for postpartum life, since that's like very close to me right now. And I came across your company and I sent it to my OB and then also to a couple of my girlfriends who recently have had kids. I'm like, are you familiar with this? Do you know what this is? This looks really interesting. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I get to talk to you. So I'm really excited to hear
I
all about
mean,
it.
amazing. I love it. I love it so much. If we're reaching you, then that's a good sign. That means like we're doing the right thing, or the algorithm is one or the other. And this is your third, right?
This is my third, yeah. And my third, and I've had such, my first two, I had such different postpartum experiences with both of them. My first one was like in the thick of quarantine COVID. My second one was also in, definitely COVID times, um, but I felt like hormonally, I felt better. And then this time, I'm like, which is why when I saw your company, I was like, oh, this is so interesting because it's all catered to postpartum life. So I want to hear like how you even came up with that um, idea to do that, because obviously there's such a need for that
Yeah,
space.
completely. Well, I love that we're getting to talk right now while it's so relevant, and I can't wait to hear what you think
Yeah.
once you're in it. But yeah, I mean, I think it won't come as a surprise to you that Anya was really born from my personal experience becoming a mom, and I'll just kind of set the stage. So we are a brand that's dedicated to mom's wellness, like you said, and specifically postpartum recovery. So we cover all things postpartum, and our goal is it's really twofold. It's to arm women, expecting mothers with the information that they need to help them prepare for what that experience is like, and not just like those first couple of weeks, but the year, 2 years, 3 years after birth. What to expect, what's going on in my body, how is that going to impact how I feel, how do I help myself through that. So that's the informational side, and then also the tools to help with everything she's struggling with, that are breastfeeding safe and clean and expert formulated, but covering everything from like exhaustion to breastfeeding issues to mood changes, hormonal shifts, hair loss, stretch marks, you name it. The list kind of goes on, and we'll keep developing more products because there's all kinds of stuff we go through. So when I had my daughter, so I have two kids, 9 and 5, and when I had my daughter, my postpartum period, my first one especially, was really challenging, and I think we hear that from so many moms, and it was definitely like the shock of those first couple of weeks for sure, when you're coming off of what's basically a surgery, and you're bleeding and you're leaking and you're like, what is happening to my body? That was definitely shocking. For me though, it was actually
Yeah.
more about months 3, 4, 6, 9, when I
Mhm.
felt like I was supposed to be back, like I was supposed to feel great, I was supposed to be back to myself, and every message I was hearing was, you should be back to work, you should be feeling great, you should be mentally clear, you should be back into your old body, right? Like, and so I think, and yet I was going through, my hair's falling out and I'm still experiencing massive mood changes and fluctuations, and my relationships have all changed, and like I'm a mom now, and who am I, and what does that mean, right? So it's like all those different components to motherhood and new motherhood, that definitely physical, but also the mental and emotional pieces that last so much longer than those first couple of weeks. And I think why it was so challenging for me was because I was so unprepared for it. You know, it was like I had no idea it was coming, and then when I'm in it and going through these things, I felt like I wasn't seeing that from my peers or social media or whatever, and so I felt like I was really the only one. So um, we set out to uh, create that resource for moms so they didn't feel like I did, which was and what so many other moms felt like. And I jumped over a lot there in the development. I think I went through my experience. I made the decision that I wanted to leave my job in retail. I was working at Rent the Runway and like went into labor in the office and was like,
Oh my gosh.
don't worry, everyone, I'll be back in a couple of weeks. It's no big deal. I'm going to have this baby, right? It's all good. And then like life just totally turned upside down. I had to make the call, like, do I go back to that job or not? And made the decision to move into the health and wellness space, but really didn't have a lot of experience and didn't know what I wanted to do. And it was through the subsequent years of working with moms, I just kind of, as a nutritional consultant, as a fitness instructor, I think I attracted what I was. I'm a new mom, and suddenly all my clients were new moms, and just sort of seeing this pattern over and over, just what I had gone through, and then seeing other moms, going through the same thing where they're struggling, they're not talking about it, they're asking me questions that I wasn't really even qualified to answer. And the number of moms that I sent to their OBGYN saying like, this is really serious, you need to go call your doctor. I think there's so much like stigma around what goes on in this period, and still, and that was 9 years ago, and so much changed, but still like such a lack of understanding of our bodies and what we're going through and what's normal and what's not. And then you layer that on with, we live in a society where there's really there are no messages telling us that this is important or we should pay attention, right? It's like we have to get back to work. There's no healthcare to speak of, where there's that one doctor's visit at 6 weeks. And then we're really missing so many of those kind of traditions and rituals that exist elsewhere around the postpartum period.
I was really surprised both times, and even just like watching my friends go through postpartum and all experiencing it so differently. Like I was really surprised that we go through pregnancy and trying to get pregnant, and then the whole time you're pregnant, you have this like strong relationship with your doctor where you're seeing them all the time, and then you end and you're seeing them every single week, and then you don't see them at all, and you see them 6 weeks later for like a quick checkup, and then you don't see them for most times another year. And as you mentioned, you're going through all of these different changes with whether it's your hair, your hormones, your body, your healing phases and process, and who you are, a new identity. So there's so many different elements that you're experiencing, and then you don't have that person who you're able to say to them like, is this okay? Is this normal? What can I do to help with X, Y, and Z? Because you are really left with asking your friends if you're comfortable, and then maybe your mom or your sister, whoever it is that is in your family that's gone through something similar. So the idea that you really tackled this phase that's oftentimes very lonely and isolating is really incredible, because especially in America, we do not have good support or really any support set up for women postpartum at all, which is absurd.
I mean, Don't get me started. It gets me so fired up, and
No.
it's like it's one of those things that the more you learn, the worse it is, And I felt that in
Yeah.
the kind of creation of Anya. It was like what actually you're touching on something that was actually a huge inspiration for me, and what really kind of lit the fire that, oh, okay, we're really missing the mark here, and we're the ones that are kind of doing something wrong. It was actually my sister-in-law who, she's Chinese, grew up in China, and she was having her baby, her second, around the same time that I was. And watching the way that she prepared for postpartum, she said to me, she said, I'm not even really doing anything for pregnancy. Like, I know my doctors have it covered. Like, there's enough support there. I'm focusing all of my attention during pregnancy on preparing for what comes after. And it was a support system, of course, but it was really interestingly to me, it was focused on nutrition. It was focused on rest and recovery. It was focused on different practices like massage, things for circulation. But she had basically a very kind of strict protocol starting week one, week to week, that mirrored what her body was going through. So making sure that she was eating the right foods to support that acute healing period and then into the different stages of recovery. And it was so fascinating to me because I'd never seen anything like it. I was like, I even had, it was just crazy. It was just so outside of like what we do here in the US.
So with your product line with Anya, can you talk about like what that was like as far as creating those products, and also like where you found the most need with each one? Because I was even browsing them myself. I was like, what should I be getting? Should I be getting the same stuff that I, thought that I needed my first postpartum or my second postpartum? So let's just talk about like the product line itself and the fact that you've created one that is safe for people who are breastfeeding or not.
Yeah, so everything we've made is you do not need to be breastfeeding to use all of our products, but we've made sure that every single one is safe for breastfeeding and is clean. And so we started with, we found we're like, all right, this time, this period needs so much attention. She needs so much help, right? She needs this information, but she needs tools. Like, what is she going through and how can we help her with that? Because that was a really big learning from other cultures, was like, oh, there are things we can do. We don't have to, we heard so much from moms, like, I just knew it would be terrible, so like I just sucked it up, right? Like there are things you can do to help it. Yeah. So we started by interviewing moms, and we surveyed over 2,000 moms across the country and asked them, what were you struggling the most with postpartum? Like what were your greatest challenges? And so then we isolated those challenges and then pulled in different experts based on, is this an internal product that you need to take? Is this something that's topical that you need to use? And pulled in an appropriate expert to help us formulate and develop. And that's what we spent over 3 years doing in building up Anya. So everything from, and I'll say our best seller is our postpartum recovery plan. And that's really like the foundation of the brand and what we launched with. And the idea is that it's this monthly subscription, and we're delivering to you what you need based on your stage of recovery. So back to this idea that we, our body heals in different stages. Right after birth, it's like really intense, acute kind of physical healing, tissue recovery, blood loss, your organs are moving around, right? Your hormones are experiencing this massive spike. I'm scary, Arnie. I need to stop and not be so scary.
No, I'm like fully aware of it. But then you think about it, like you say all those things, and then you're just like, the fact that we're just like,
right,
good luck and go home is like such a crazy thing, because you think about what a woman's body is going through, and it's like all the things you just listed on top of sleep deprivation and your body working overtime to make milk and breastfeeding and, trying to balance if you have multiple kids or entering motherhood for the first time. So there's so much that you're experiencing, and then each time is different because you may, like now I have 2 other kids, so now I'm bringing in a 3rd kid, and like what's that going to be like? I don't know. So there's unknown with like each phase or each experience that you have with postpartum. So being able to, like look at your website or look at your product line and be able to say like, okay, here's where I think I might need some extra support, or I had postpartum hair loss in this one and I, really don't want to experience it again this time. So like maybe I need some support in that area. It's just
Yes,
like,
totally. And I'm also getting derailed and not answering your questions. In our first month and in every month, our postnatal multivitamin and omega is really our hero product. It's the foundation of the assortment, but also the brand. The idea is inner and outer healing, and that's everything we stand for. It's like, how do we help deliver the additional nutrients that your body needs right now to support all these extra functions like we were just talking about. I mean, that alone, the idea, a lot of women still take a prenatal after birth, and everything that we just listed off that you're going through, it makes sense, right? Like, of course we need more things, but it's just not talked about or understood well enough. But there is research that supports that your body needs actually higher levels of 15 key nutrients after birth versus pregnancy, right? So this vitamin is kind of like your foundational nutrition. Here's covering your baselines.
So all of your products, you can take into consideration the fact that you guys have thought of both mom and baby. So it's safe. You don't need to like go send it to 7 different people to make sure that it's, okay for you to be taking postpartum, whether you're choosing to breastfeed or not, and that you won't have any negative side effects from taking something that is designed specifically for women in the phase of postpartum, whatever the degree or varying degrees of experiencing symptoms might
exactly be. Yep, you said that exactly right. And we to be able to say those things and feel really confident about it, that was what took us over 3 years in development. And as a mother, I was really frustrated because I'm typing into Amazon like a product, and then if I add safe for breastfeeding, 1 to 2% of the results show up from that original search. I felt like I had no way of understanding, is this safe or not, and what were the checks that these companies did to make sure that was the case. And so we started with all of our formulas were developed, so all of our supplements were developed with registered dietitians, and our topicals with dermatologists. So that initial kind of like, okay, how do we find ingredients that have research behind them that can deliver this result? Then we work with product developers. How do we make a product that will feel good and work? Like our scalp serum is really important to us, but it's not like one of these greasy hair masks. It's something that you just add to your hair every day. Like dry styled hair, it's water-based, so it dries, goes on really easily, doesn't make you feel greasy, has a nice scent, but it's like very herbal. So just those kind of experiential factors were really important. And then once we got to, products that we felt really good about, we reviewed all of our formulas with OBGYNs, a team of OBGYNs. So ran the formulations by them, and then in that process worked with toxicologists. So every single product has been reviewed by a toxicologist. So they're looking at what's the latest research for pregnant and postpartum breastfeeding moms, and in terms of the upper limits of these ingredients, what's safe, what's not. We do use a couple of herbs. They're like really safe, for lack of a better word, herbs like ginger and cinnamon bark, and we didn't take it too far, but with herbs you have to be careful. So anyway, so those were all of the steps, and then we focus grouped with moms for about a year before we launched as well.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you took the time to actually go through all of those steps to make sure people felt comfortable in using your product is really impressive. I'm curious to see or to know, in your experience having launched your brand and your product line, what has been like the biggest feedback or most common feedback or surprising feedback that you've gotten from moms in this, incredibly vulnerable and raw time in life and relying on your product in that time? Has there been anything that's come up that's surprising to you, or that is reassuring to you in making your
You
products?
know, I'm being perfectly honest. Like the biggest surprise, it's gonna sound weird. The biggest surprise has been that moms are the feedback and what they're writing and saying to us is beyond what I expected in terms of how we're helping them feel better. They're saying, I feel different. I notice a day when I don't take my vitamins. I can't believe how different I feel. This is my fourth baby. This is my second baby. I feel like a different person this time around. And truly, like,
Wow.
I know the power of nutrition and supplements, but we all know, like, you don't often or always feel that, right? Like, there are
Yeah.
if you're really deficient, you can definitely feel that. But if you're not highly deficient in a certain nutrient, and it depends on the nutrient, you might not actually feel a big difference. And so I didn't expect the overwhelming response in that sense of like, I truly, I have more energy, my milk supply is more stable, my moods feel more regulated. I feel like I can handle what's coming at me. Like that's truly like the most incredible thing and what keeps us going every day, obviously. So that's kind of been the best surprise.
I feel like hearing all of this also like in a very weird way to me makes me excited about my postpartum to be able to have something that you feel like is catered to this phase in your life that you see all these videos, especially like on social media now, if you're pregnant or you're even like in this phase of life, and it's talking to you about like, oh, the postpartum period is the biggest
You're
hormonal
like,
drop you'll ever face in your entire life. I'm like, oh my God, great. Or like, all of these crazy stories and experiences people have. And then you kind of find, Anya, and you're like, okay, so here's something that's offering me support and also balance and taking into account maybe certain things that I might be experiencing or facing. So it's such a genius idea. And then to be able to do it and have the success and the feedback that you've had is so amazing that it kind of makes me look at this postpartum and I'm like, is this gonna be like so different for
do
me?
you
What is it gonna
I
be
have to
like?
tell you something that's like truly the best thing you could have ever said to me, because that is exactly what we're trying to do. And I almost think like in the 9 years since I had my daughter, I'm so super deep in the space, of course, but like we've almost gone 180 where there was no information back then, and now there's so much. There is a lot of information
Yeah.
out there, and a lot of it's really scary and like daunting. And our mission
Yeah.
is that we want women to feel prepared and empowered and not scared.
Mm.
So what you just said means so much to me, because that's exactly what we're trying to do. And we're not like making this up or coming up with this. I think this is the big I don't know, thing that other cultures have figured out that we haven't, right? Or that have been not figured out, have been doing forever that we haven't. It's like mothers
Yeah.
in other parts of the world. We actually spoke with moms from about 15 different countries and just did like hour calls with them, just asked them about their experience. And one woman said, it's been ingrained in me since I was a child that this is a really important period of time. And she's like, and it's, it just is what it is. I've always known this. I've always known that like, whether I like it or not, my mom and my aunt are going to move in with me, and like, they're going to not let me shower, and they're going to, it's really strict, but it was like, this is important. And it was almost like this,
Mm-hmm.
I'm prepared and I know it's coming, and it's a special moment. And so it just made me think of what you're saying, because I think there is a place for it to feel it's a moment in time, and it's a short moment in time, and it doesn't have to. I think it's scary when you don't know what's coming and you're in it and you're like, oh my God, am I the only one going through this? And like, so
Yeah.
I love that. I love what you said. And I can't wait for your postpartum experience. I can't wait to talk to you.
I know. I'm thrilled to know that. I'm so grateful that you took the time to kind of explain the need for your brand and also the products. And And then also someone who's about to like step into this time is really, I feel like, excited and optimistic about it, and not as looking at this as like, oh, this is going to be a
Yeah.
disaster of a time. So thank you for creating the product, and I'm so excited to be able to try it this time around and to be able to have that support. I feel like is going to be a game changer for me. Thank you so much.
Of course. This was so much fun, and I love talking to you. And I can't wait to hear how you're doing.
Thank you so much to Jane for taking time to talk to me today about Anya. And I'm feeling really good, comfortable, and excited, weirdly, about my postpartum journey ahead, knowing that I have such great products and supplements that I'll be able to use to help me in this phase of my postpartum journey. So thank you to Jane, and thank you all for listening.